Welcome to episode 6 of the You've Probably Never Heard of Me podcast, a podcast dedicated to shining a light on underground artists, creators, and changemakers that the algorithm keeps skipping over. I'm your host, Ryan Allen. I'm a Detroit based musician. I've spent over 2 decades playing in bands like Thunderbirds Are Now, Extra Arms, Big Life, Speed Circuit, and I've made lots of records and really, more importantly, met a lot of talented people along the way that maybe you don't know about yet. And that's kind of what this podcast is here to fix. So today, my guest is Craig Benedict Valentine Badynee, or CBVB for you abbreviation enthusiasts out there. He's a songwriter, he's a multi-instrumentalist, and a producer who got his start in the Detroit 90s space rock and shoegaze scene with Asha Vida. And then he went on to front the orchestral indie pop band Pascal, who received accolades from Pitchfork, NPR, and more. And then he kind of ducked out of music for a little while to raise a family and hold down a day job. But he's back as a solo artist on Team Love Records with a new EP called Don't Leave Your House to an Amateur, which fans of his work in Pascal, I think, will delight to hear. I'm a big fan of his work, so I'm really honored to have you on the show. Welcome, Craig. Thank you for being here.
Hey, thank you. God, it makes me sound pretty good.
That's
I appreciate
that's what
that.
I'm here for. I'm just
Yes.
I'm here to gas you up for free.
Yeah, build
Uh
me up, Buttercup.
yeah,
Yep.
here we go. Well, I want to start just giving people a little bit of background. Um I'm curious kind of because your music has kind of gone through so many different kind of evolutions over time. Um and your influences are kind of vast and wide. I feel like you're like a record nerd type person
Yeah.
like me, you know. So
Yes. Yeah.
what kind of first drew you to music? Did your parents have like a big record collection? Were you like a radio person? Did you go to
Yeah.
shows like as a kid? Like where did it all kind of begin for you?
Yeah. Yeah, when I was really little, this music always seemed incredibly important to our family.
Mhm.
My dad was always really into big band music. He was much older than me. So my dad was born in 1931. And
Okay.
so I grew up, driving in the back of his like big Cadillac, listening to like Benny Goodman, Artie Shaw, and all these kind of things. And what's been a long time influence on me is like all his little comments. A lot of times,
Okay.
like if you think about a song like "My Funny Valentine," like
Hmm.
the original has a really long, extended intro.
Right.
And I remember my older brother Chris, was always in bands. His big band was called Cadillac Kids for
Right.
aficionados in Detroit. And I remember we went to go see him play. And on the drive home, we're listening to big band with my dad, me, him, and my brother. And he goes, "None of your songs have introductions. They just start and then out of nowhere they end." He's like, great written songs. They have a beginning, a middle. There's something different, and then there's an end. And
Yeah.
like he had these certain comments about like arrangements and stuff, but not being a musician himself. But for whatever reason,
Hmm.
that always like meant a lot to me. So
Right. It's almost
uh,
looking at it like a book or a movie in a more like
yeah,
cinematic or storytelling kind of
yeah.
way, right?
Yeah, just that, there's important parts that make a song or something like that. It's almost like he would detect when the anatomy of a song wasn't there. Like, that
Okay.
song's
Yeah,
missing a leg, well, that's a problem.
yeah.
So there's that. And then my mom was kind of like, she was a little bit older too. And so she always had her kind of, even though she was having all these kids, I'm number 6 out of 6. She
Okay.
always kind of had her foot into youth culture.
Yeah.
And when she had her first batch of 5 kids, a lot of that was taking place in the 60s. And so she was
Hmm.
always really like had a keen ear to um, not only like Detroit, like Motown and soul stuff, but she was
Hmm.
into like hippy dippy things,
Hmm.
and like I guess my first album I really liked was um, by Herman's Herberts, like Mrs. Whoever, You Got a Lovely Daughter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so records were kind of just like important, but my parents were just, my dad was a fireman and my mom was She worked at a drive-in theater,
Okay.
and just, they raised kids and they were just busy like that. But music was important. And then I had this much older brother who's like, I think 15 years older than me. And there were his bands were practicing in my basement all the time. So like my
Mhm.
mom was the cool mom letting them
Right,
always
right.
practice. So I would be just hanging out, just like playing Lego while the bands are going on. So it just was kind of like a thing. And it just felt like a natural, like my brother did it, and it just kind of made sense for me to do it. It just
Hmm.
seemed like it had to go that way or something
Hmm.
like that. Like,
Hmm.
because I wasn't going to be a fireman, so like, I guess I'll, make music. But,
I
and
mean,
my
it sounds
brother,
like, oh, I'm sorry to cut you off. I was just gonna say it sounds like there was a vocabulary around it with your parents, even though they weren't musicians,
yeah,
they could articulate things that they observed musically. It sounds like your mom, like you
yeah,
said, she was sort of like more up on like whatever was current through your
yeah,
brothers kind of growing up, and then I'm sure into like your young adulthood as well, and then your dad kind of introducing the concept of like introductions and
yeah,
like I can understand how that has an influence on you as an artist, just knowing
yeah,
your music. Like there is a cinematic quality to it almost. There's like there is like I'm the kind of songwriter that's like this get right to it,
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah,
the
yeah.
chorus is maybe the first thing you hear,
Yeah, and
but like
I'm
I
fine. I'm perfectly fine, like with all that. Like I don't
yeah, yeah.
like, you know, every form of music has value. There's great, you know, in every genre. There's the great, the middling, and the bad, and so, um, my brother. When I was coming up really young, one of the great things he did for me was he made me all these crazy mixtapes.
Yeah.
And so it would be stuff like the Stooges, going into Kraftwerk, going into Parliament Funkadelic,
Hmm.
going into Yellow Man. It was just like such a mishmash of
Yeah.
like sounds. And so he's always been just, I remember we'd drive around in his car, and if like Led Zeppelin came on, he would like turn it off and be like, "Time to buy a new radio. This radio sucks." And like, I don't know. He just wanted to hear new stuff. He was
Yeah,
so
yeah,
tired of, and
yeah,
so all that were like influences on like it's just like a little sponge for all that stuff. Like that's all the kind of stuff that like had an impact on me. And for my mom, she was like, my dad cared about song structure for some reason, uh, and musicianship, with all those great clarinetists, and stuff like that. But my mom, I think she was like into like always into like social causes and
okay.
social change. So it's like the Joan Baez's and people
Hmm.
like that. They were like almost writing, music for a reason other than to sell records, kind of thing like that. So I don't know, all these little things were like just all kind of surrounding me. And so music from a really young age was just like super important to me. I just thought it was like, I don't know, I guess I was an 8-year old thinking like it's the highest art, whatever that is. It just seemed like the most important thing, like more
Yeah.
more important than like a Superman movie, Star Wars, or like
Hmm.
a sports team or something like that.
Yeah, no, I can relate, growing up as well, and having a father who played music, like it was
Yeah,
always kind of part of my life, even when I wasn't really like sure if I wanted to do it myself,
yeah, I
it
forgot it was
almost seemed
yeah,
like,
plays. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. But, so I think for, I guess like my first kind of question is, did all of your siblings, do you feel like they had a similar relationship to music, or was it where they had their own things and some of them were kind of
yeah,
connected, and some of them were more like, I'm just, this is not really
yeah.
something that I'm like drawn to or obsessed with in the same way that maybe you and some of your other siblings were?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody had their ear to something. Like
Okay.
you know, the brother who's closest in age to me, who's like 10 years older, he just like whatever was on the radio. Like he was like really into like pop music,
Hmm.
and but I remember he'd be dragging me in there to like be backup on like something. He's like, okay,
Hmm.
you just sing the whatever part, and
Yeah.
I'm doing the lead.
Yeah.
So there's those memories. My sister Lori was like really cool and like in a bunch of like new wave, no wave scenes and stuff like
Cool.
that. So, you know, she had cool records and cool posters. Chris, I grew up with full size cutouts of like the Ramones and T Rex,
Hmm.
and stuff like that. I mean, like they're larger than life, like literally, because I was just a
Yeah,
little kid and they were like
sure.
towering. But and then my other siblings, they were into like musical theater and stuff like that. So I never
Hmm.
really thought about that. But that kind of stuff comes into play too. I,
Absolutely.
you
Yeah.
know, as like a songwriter, I've always had this, or maybe it was during the Pascal days, probably. I'm not sure, but early on, I kind of like felt like I like that idea of when people talk about like the American Songbook, and not to be as pretentious as to think like I've contributed to it, but I do think anybody who writes a song, it's kind of is taking part in that. It's like one of the ways that we kind of interact with those before us, not only the contemporary influences and stuff like that, but taking influence from the past. It's like it's one of those ways that you really do have some kind of like direct line to people that are no longer on the earth, but
Yeah.
the music that they made still affects you. And so that was another, I guess, stream of music that I never really thought about too much, but there was like musical theater. I was going to it as a kid,
Hmm.
and like my mom would have like Oklahoma on,
Hmm.
or whatever, whatever was on like the TV. But like we'd all be kind of like forced to watch whatever your parents were watching.
Yeah.
My dad was a reader, so he'd even watch TV, so it was usually my mom's taste. And so
Well, I can
all that
again,
stuff
like,
comes into
I,
it. Yeah.
yeah, I can identify that, in your music for sure. There's like always an element of drama. I think,
Yeah.
to what you've done, and sometimes it's, maybe like a little tongue in cheek, and maybe other times it's, like done with like intentionality or whatever. But
Yeah.
like I can understand kind of how like all of that kind of like
Yes.
mishmashes together and kind of forms the artist that I'm familiar with,
Yeah.
and I also think what you said about um kind of like slightly paying homage, but like it's almost like a carrying of the torch or passing of the torch,
Yeah.
or just like, I
Like a
think,
tradition or something. I
yeah,
don't know
exactly.
what it is. It's like, and it's like, I like thinking about it that way because as an unpopular artist, like I like thinking about it that way because I
Hmm.
kind of just think it's like not always about that. It's about kind of there is it's contributing, and it's adding to the pile kind of thing, and it's like there's a nice kind of like give and take kind of aspect to it.
Totally. Yeah.
I mean, it's maybe like a craft, and I think about that a lot. Like um I think that there's a bit of an issue with rock and roll and age, you
Hmm.
know, and I tend to look at music like I have a lot of visual art friends who've just been doing it ever since they were teenagers, and now they're in their 50s and they're still doing it. And there's no one that says, "Oh wow, you're still doing that," like to like a visual artist. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
But if there's someone with a guitar in their hand, they're like, "Oh, you're still doing that."
Yeah. Well,
And
you're more of the jester. You're kind of like on stage, and
yeah,
there's like a there's performance to it, obviously,
yeah,
and there's less maybe so when it comes to visual art, right?
yeah,
Like a painter, or
sure,
a graphic designer or something like that.
yeah,
There's not a
yeah.
performance aspect to it, so it's viewed by people as more credible or something like that, maybe,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
more
Well, it's just
like
I think people think
something
it's
you can age
sequestered
gracefully
to like
doing,
people who are young. Like
Hmm.
it's a youth culture kind of thing only. But I
What?
mean, to me, it reminds me of like the theater world or something like that.
Hmm.
Like the parts you play might change, but you're still involved. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Well,
now you're the dad or the grandpa
right, right.
in a theater piece, but you're an actor
Yeah.
nonetheless.
Yeah.
You're still
You're
doing.
Mr. Mushnick. You're Mr. Mushnick
Yes.
now in Little Shop of Horrors.
Yes.
No,
And so I'm in my Mushnik era.
yeah, hey, I love it. I played Mr. Mushnick in my high school production of
Awesome.
A Little Shop of Horrors, actually.
Love
Not a
that
lie,
one.
not a lie. No, I think everything you said very much resonates with me, and I think that, um, like it's the only art form where like you age in and you can actually get better at what you
Yeah.
are trying to do, not just maybe like as a musician, but even wider than that. Like
Yeah.
your point of view expands, and the things that you're like willing to write about
Sure.
expands. And sure, like your musical sophistication can grow too, but like
Yeah.
it for some reason is looked at by people who don't do it as this like foolish pursuit as
Yeah.
you get older. And for me it's like I'm way better at this than I was when
Oh
you
yeah. No, I feel the
probably
same thing.
first heard of me, you
Yeah.
know.
No, I think, and it's something I think about a lot. And I care about words, and
Hmm.
lyrics and things like
Sure.
that. And it's like, I mean, the more life I've lived, the more kind of poignant or funny or whatever I could be in what I write about, because
Hmm.
I know so much more, and
Yeah.
I've personally experienced so much more. But there's something to be said about being young and just romanticizing everything, and that could be some really fantastic lyrics too. So I mean, like, none of
Sure.
it is to dismiss anything, but I do kind of think about myself, and like, I'm perfectly fine with writing songs that a 50-year-old Craig would write. I don't really want to write what a 25-year-old Craig would write.
Right. No, and I
I
feel the
did
same
that.
way.
I already did
Yeah.
it. So it's
Right.
like, and now I'm doing something else. And
Well,
so,
let's talk about what you did do, because I think
okay, yeah,
that like
sorry.
no, no, this is great. But yeah, like Asha Vida, for people who don't know, was a part of this like sort of Detroit space rock. Obviously, shoegaze was happening at that point, and there was a lot of American and UK shoegaze bands that were,
Yeah,
getting recognition. But in Detroit, there was Wendy and Carl.
yeah,
There's Majesty Crush. There's a lot more. There's the Burnt Hair label. There's record stores like Play It Again, where kind of
yeah,
like
yeah,
fostering that scene a little bit. And then there was Zoots, of course, as well, which I never actually got to go to. It was
yeah. It's
like I
amazing.
wasn't cool. I was the older brother who was not like nobody
Yeah,
was telling me any to go to these places. But
yeah,
anyway, I'm just
yeah,
curious, like, how did you kind of like land on that sound and like the formation of that band and
yeah,
what was that scene like? What was it like being part of that scene,
yeah.
uh, in the 90s?
Yeah. Yeah, so we were deeply entrenched in all of that.
Hmm.
Like, we would perform regularly with Wendy and Carl and Majesty Crush, and I would go to Zoots like 4 or 5 nights a week,
Hmm.
and then a couple of those nights I'm playing.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that was kind of my first foray into like a scene. I grew up in Detroit, in a neighborhood in Detroit, and I went to Wayne State,
Hmm.
and so all of that was kind of happening around, where I was spending all my time anyways. So it's
Like a
like,
3 square mile,
yeah,
like
it's
yeah,
kind of
right,
crazy.
right.
But I was so happy to kind of run into like-minded people that, most of them weren't from the city. They were, usually people from the suburbs that went to school, like at
Hmm.
CCS or Wayne State. But it was just great, like bumping into all these, like, you know, people that you could like talk about Can records or something
Hmm.
like that. Like, I'm
Hmm.
like, oh my
Yeah.
God, you know Can? Like, yeah. And then people would be like, yeah, Damo's like my favorite. And
But
you're like, what?
that wasn't as, I mean, maybe you can correct me, but like I feel like that stuff kind of like clicked with people like in a larger sense later on,
It
like
might have, yeah. But you know
but
what was
maybe.
happening? There was so much, there was interesting, I think this happens a lot with like scenes and things like that, like
Mhm.
especially in smaller communities, like at the time what Detroit was. There was always about like 300 people at shows. At They would go to the Detroit Art Center to watch a movie. There'd be about 300 people in the audience there. At a gallery opening, about 300 people. It was
Right.
about 300 people always.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
like, there was just so much cool stuff happening, where I remember, going to see a movie about um, Bob Moog, and I
Hmm.
remember thinking all of Detroit just learned that it's not Moog, it's Moog. Like,
Right.
all the people that care about this shit, we all
Right.
walked out of there, all of us being pretentious now and going
Right.
like, I think you.
You leveled up your pretension
Yeah,
a
but there
little
was
bit.
like a
Yeah.
lot of like people
Right.
that came a little bit before us that were like curating things, and they were sharing them
Sure.
with us by having cool art shows,
Right.
and being in cool bands like Destroy All Monsters,
Hmm.
and like the guys from MC5 still walking around and stuff like,
Yeah.
there
And
was
you
a
got Matt,
lot of
Matt
that.
Smith. Matt Smith
Yeah,
is
oh,
like
of
starting
course,
to do
like Matt.
stuff, and yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely,
there was
yeah.
just a lot of cool stuff that was just popping around. So it was like, and people who are just a little bit older were, when we first started as Asha Vida, like someone like Warren DeFever or something might say like,
Hmm.
you know, hey, you remind me of Ashra Temple or something. I don't
Yeah.
know. Just
Simply
as like an
Saucer.
example. And then I'd be like, who's that? And I go look it up. I'm
Right,
like,
right.
this is cool,
Yeah.
And so there was this like this crazy like it was like a lot of people were like just kind of sharing like I remember going to Dion Fisher's
Hmm.
uncle's house and like that's the first time I ever heard like Serge Gainsbourg and broadcast. And like that changed me. But that's a little later
Sure.
on.
A little later, yeah.
Like that afternoon changed the trajectory of like my
Hmm.
musical like
Yeah.
aspirations. But yeah, Ashvita is a really unique band in that like it was me and it was this guitarist named Eric Peaty, who's a
Hmm.
really good visual artist, and he has a band called Jura, and a great drummer named Jesse Rafferty, who is with me, and
Hmm.
Pascal too. And he was like a kid, even though maybe like 3 or 4 years younger than us, but we were all kids. We were like in our really really early 20s, and we had it in our head like to not try to sound like anything. That's why when we were lumped into the space rock stuff, like it pushed us farther and farther into like, you know, we stopped writing songs, we would only do improv.
Hmm.
And it was kind of amazing, like while we were just doing improvisational, like noisy, spacey, whatever, that's all of a sudden when for some reason like we were opening up for like all like Pale Saints and
Hmm.
Swerve Driver and all this
Hmm.
stuff and like we
Hmm.
had no set list, we just
Hmm.
go and just do whatever happened, and
Hmm.
so it was such a great school of figuring out in the moment what works and what doesn't work, and none of us were trained. Jesse might have I think played drums at like a church or something like that, but like
Hmm.
beyond that like we had no training, and so I've never, my brother Chris, who's that big influential spirit to me, like he could play a bunch of instruments, but he would always like tell me, like, I would say, like, hey, can you show me a couple guitar chords or something like that? And he's like, listen, put your fingers on the fretboard. If it sounds like shit, then that's not a good chord. And if it sounds great, then that's a great chord. So go, eh.
Yeah.
And so he wasn't much help like that. So it was like,
Or he
we were
was.
all just like forcing it out and trying to figure out. So it made sense to kind of do things that were like not traditional, maybe because it
Hmm.
was at our, we had the ability to do that in a way. And I used to think, and this will get us to Pascal, I used to think like, we were getting some recognition and, press was writing nice things about Ashavita and things like that. And I was thinking, this is easy though. Like the hardest fucking thing to do is to write like a memorable 3-minute pop song,
Yeah.
or something interesting.
Truly, yeah.
And so I used to say like, and this is like in the mid '90s, I would say by 1999, I'm gonna cut out of this crap and I want to start like just a pop band.
Yeah.
And I was thinking I might call it 1999 because I love Prince so
Hmm.
much.
Right.
But that's kind of how um, Pascal came about.
Well,
Um,
before we get there,
yeah,
I'm curious, like, first of all, like, I think a lot of musicians' first foray into playing with other people is this like almost like improvised, like you don't really know what you're doing. Like you might be
yeah,
playing covers and shit, right? But like I remember, jamming with like my neighbor who lived down the street, and I would play drums and he would play guitar. And he
yeah,
didn't
yeah,
even have it didn't have like six strings on the guitar. It was like,
yeah, yeah,
we don't need the high E, It's like,
yeah,
okay, I thought you did,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But doing weird shit like that and just kind of making things up as you go along, I think a lot of people do start that way. And it's
yeah,
interesting that like you kind of latched onto that as like, no, this is actually like this is what we do. Like we're not just like getting ourselves prepped to
yeah,
do this like more structured thing. Like this is the band,
yeah,
And so
yeah.
I find that super interesting because I did not see Asha Vida. I was
Okay, yeah, yeah,
a little too young, maybe, and just like not connected yet to
yeah.
like the things I would be later. But I am curious about, fast forward to 2020, that compilation that Rich Hansen,
All right, sure.
curated,
Yeah,
the Southeast of Saturn comp that came out on Third Man, the song Eskimo Summer that
yeah.
is on that. Like, first of all, just like kind of curious, were you how did you feel about being included? Like, did you think like, yes, like we fit with these other bands that are on
Yeah.
here, or I don't know, just like,
Yeah, it all made, I mean, it made sense. It's funny.
yeah.
It's definitely, I feel like it's my juvenilia. Like,
Hmm.
um, that was us trying to write a song. And it really was like
Yeah.
maybe one of the first things we did. And I remember I was singing so low because I was so nervous about my voice and stuff like that. And so the whole thing is like whispered
Yeah.
until the end. I always remember the outro is like my real voice.
Yeah,
Like,
I hear the Pascal Craig
yeah. And
show up
then
a little bit. And it is
it's,
like a very melodic song, honestly. Like,
yeah.
and it does have a weird kind of beginning, and so maybe your dad,
Yes.
shout out to
That
your
kind of
dad for
stuff.
that. But
Yeah. So we would be, yeah. So that would be, even if I wasn't playing guitar back then, but like,
Mhm.
and our guitarist Eric was like not a traditional guitarist at all. Like, and when he tried to be, it was horrible. And then when he was just himself, often it was magical. And that's the thing. Like when you said like I never got to see Asha Vida, it's like we had some magical moments and we had
Mhm.
some like horrible ones because it was always improvised. It's like it was inconsistent, but the magical ones were really amazing, like almost spiritually amazing moments
Yeah,
because none of us knew what to expect.
right.
Then like to have a consistent like 30-minute 40-minute set or something that we just made up in front of people, like you feel good about yourself,
Hmm.
and it really does just make you go, like, we can do anything. And like, we did start getting really crazy about really nutty things. Like I started getting really heady about like the, relationship between two notes and like,
Hmm.
it was, we were wasting so much time. Like for a while it was like college, but then which was great. Like it was a
Hmm.
learning thing. And then it almost got sort of like toxic, but like we're all friends. I don't mean in that way, but like just the way that we started getting really
Yeah.
microscopic
No, I
about
get.
sound, and we had to stop. Like it was like a problematic. I kind of
Right.
did the same thing with but I was going small in Ashvita. Like I was
Right.
really started paying attention between like a dum
Hmm.
dum and like what could happen in between there and stuff. It was
Hmm.
weird. Started getting
Yeah.
weird. And then with Pascal later on, it got too like maximalist. Like everything started getting like way too overwrought and too,
Yeah.
So I don't know what that crap is. It's been a wrestling match with songwriting and making music for years.
Well, yeah,
Um,
it really is like a interesting like kind of transition between both projects in a way. There's the abstract kind of improv thing that you were doing, and then,
yeah.
the band that might have been called 1999, kind of that idea shows up in your mind. And I'm sure there was just, and you can tell me obviously, but like, were there records or artists that you maybe weren't into or aware of? You mentioned broadcasts maybe as one
Oh
of
yeah.
them, but like, was there like some kind of like break where you're like, oh, like I'm being drawn away from this more like, let's debate the relationship between two
Yeah,
notes, and I'd
yeah.
like to maybe debate the relationship between four or five notes,
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah,
five
yeah, yeah.
chords.
Yeah.
Like
No, yeah,
how.
things just got a little too like almost intellectual, and then the music wasn't fun anymore,
Mhm.
and like we were so committed to not sounding like anything, so
Mhm.
like and you know anytime anybody like would make some reference, we'd get so mad at them, it's just really immature and silly to think that like somehow we're in some vacuum and we were coming up with something. But there was this like aspiration to do something new.
Mhm.
And I think what was happening was the frustration that we couldn't really, and so like, that's why we were going microscopic, and like
Yeah.
hoping that maybe we could find something. And
Mhm.
I mean, in doing that, I don't know. We did cool stuff. Like we played the Knitting Factory, which was a really great club that like John Zorn would be playing at and stuff. Like,
Sure.
I mean, we took it as far as we three could take what that was.
Right.
So it just kind of like naturally kind of fell apart, and we probably were getting on each other's nerves and just
Mhm.
not finishing shit
Well,
and
and you're
whatever.
young, you're younger too, right? And you're sort of
Yeah,
figuring out like not only like you're still learning how to have relationships with people. Yeah, I mean, I think
Mhm.
we're always learning that. But
Yeah,
especially at the time when there's like this, and I assume, you guys took it very seriously. Like when there is this serious thing that you're sharing amongst people at a young age.
yeah,
I can think back to Thunderbirds and like, the things that we were doing in our, at 22, 23, 24.
yeah,
And there's shit that would happen or like arguments we'd get into that like now
yes.
you just look back and you're like, what,
I
why would
know.
we even care
I
about
know.
that?
No, I
But
know.
you're figuring out and you're stumbling through and
Yeah,
you fall on your face a lot, and then
yeah,
there's other times where you like you were saying, you might play like a 30-40 minute set of this like
yeah,
transcendent, like I can't believe we actually pulled that
yeah,
off
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
moment, and it's like, well, let's try it again.
yeah.
But
Exactly.
it seems like it kind of ran its course, and so yeah, I'm interested to kind of like transition to Pascal. Like I
Yeah.
said, like, are there records or there influences,
Oh
and I
yeah,
don't want to just like spend the whole time talking about that because I think there's way more to discuss, but
yeah,
like I am curious, like, to go from this like improvised abstract thing to like what I consider like very sophisticated pop music.
yeah.
What was the sort of like, what boat did you get on to get across
Well,
the
I think
channel
it's
to the other
because
side? Was
yeah,
it Bowie?
it's
Was it
all yeah. It's
broadcast?
like
Was it
Bowie. It's like the Kinks. It's Donovan, the Beatles, all that kind of stuff. Like
And did you shun that stuff earlier in your life and then come to it
yeah, so it was.
later?
I remember thinking about that. It's weird in that, and I would always joke around about like we're reverse Beatles because like the Beatles started off totally like lollipop almost
Yeah,
like,
boy
and
band.
then they got weird, and I was like,
Hmm.
oh, we started weird, and now we're going lollipop kind of
Right.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, I always like really loved great songwriting and really melodic music and just and important lyrics and things like that. And so, I mean, basically, it was just like one aspect. Like Asha Vida was like one aspect that is still in me actually. But my friend's kid, who's like 22, I think, was like,
Hmm.
"Hey, I want to hear Asha Vida." This is last
Hmm.
night actually.
Okay.
He's like, I love like shoegaze and like
Yeah.
my old like angst was like, we're not shoegaze, but okay, I'll play it for you.
Yeah.
But it's like, and listening to that stuff again, I still have that in me. Like I feel like I can go to, matter of fact, me, Jesse, and Eric last year we did record some new songs, and I think they're
Oh,
great,
okay.
and they're
Cool.
all this like through like Jesse recorded some drums, sent them to Eric. Eric recorded some like improvised guitar. I cut all of it up and then wrote like songs over it.
Okay.
And I think it's great. It's like like I think it's the best stuff that we did. But
Is
I
that gonna
that
ever come out or
I don't know,
too
maybe.
early?
Yeah, we were
Yeah.
talking like Darla Records and stuff like that. But then
Okay. All right.
I'm
That's
just so
cool.
focused on my own thing. It's just I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
start. But anyways, I think it was such a good you know, to kind of push things to the very limits starting out really helped me when I was coming up with like a three-chord pop song because
Hmm.
like I knew that there were no limits or I knew it'd be fun to throw something like that from the left field into something that was conventional. And
Yeah.
then that was always like really important to me. Like
Hmm.
I always wanted like a couple weird chords in there or a
Right.
weird
Right.
change or whatever. Like that was always really important to me because Ashvita was so important to me. And like
Hmm.
how we did things there and how committed we were to doing something different. And so all the like just all that syrupy sweet pop stuff that I always loved always had to be kind of put through like almost like an Asha Vida like grinder a bit or just like a little
No.
machine to be
Yeah.
like that's too that's too normal or whatever. And so
Right.
and so a lot of that Pascal writing was always like informed by that. It was like me trying to do something accessible. Like I used to love when like someone's aunt or mom
Hmm.
liked our music, like it would make
Hmm.
me really happy.
Yeah.
Like I was
Right.
just like,
Right.
I want to do that. I want to just write good songs that
Yeah.
like just people like because they hear them and they're good songs, not because like they need to know about this genre. And if they know about this genre, then they could appreciate
Right.
this. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
I didn't want that at that time. I just really wanted to write like songs that were kind of fun to listen to. All along, I had this subversive kind of thing going on with either lyrical content
Sure.
or, maximalist like structures or whatever. Like I was trying to do, I didn't want it to sound like prog, but I wanted it to be like thinking man's music in a way.
Hmm.
Like, I don't know. There's all that kind of stuff that was
No,
important. So all my love of simple music just kind of like, you know, kind of I was on a crash course with all the more avant-garde stuff. And then that kind of was Pascal. And I don't know if you just would come across Pascal and have any idea that there's all the other shit. You might just go like, oh, they're like a fun summertime like twee band or something like.
hmm.
And maybe that's what that sounds like.
Yeah, and I think it depends on like your obvious like your knowledge of you know like I feel like I understood that, because I had a wider net
Yeah.
cast for what I was into. And honestly, like what you just said about kind of running things through the like Asha Vida, like grinder or whatever, like
Yeah.
I can totally relate because, when Thunderbirds were kind of going and figuring out like what we were trying to do and be and all this shit, like
Yeah.
we were certainly also trying to be subversive and annoying was kind of our
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I sort of like when that band ended and I was like, well, what am I going to do next? Like I found myself wanting to go back to the like power pop and like more kind
Yeah.
of like structured stuff that I was into in high school maybe,
Yeah.
but then would sort of like want to fuck it up a little bit,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think there's even like Guided by Voice is a really good example
Hmm.
of this like
Yeah.
this guy who can write these like amazing pop songs, but like the first 10 records sound horrible, and you have to
Yeah.
dig through
Yeah.
it to like figure out like what is happening here. Like I remember when I
Yeah.
first heard B1000 and Alien Lanes, I'm like, this sounds like I hear the Beatles, I hear the Kinks, like I hear
Hmm.
these things,
Yeah.
but why does it sound so bad? Like what is
Yeah.
it? And I was
Yeah.
like 14 or 15 when I heard those
Yeah.
records, but I appreciated this kind of like challenge that was set up
Yeah.
where it's like, yeah, this is a good song. Like if
Yeah.
this was recorded in, this, multi-million dollar studio, like it would
Yes.
be on
Right.
every radio, but
And
that's not what this
stripping away all
is,
the noise and stuff like that. But
yeah.
that's the charm, and you'd be stripping away the charm.
Exactly. And so I feel like with Pascal, like the left turns, the like, like
Yeah.
diversions and the sort of like playing with dynamics and the again like the drama from your maybe like
Yeah.
mom listening to musical theater and being exposed to that as a kid, like I've almost like picture like you in this like marionette sort of like I'm like orchestrating this thing that at its core is super accessible and melodic and like
Yeah.
something like you said your aunt could like hear and be like, oh,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
like summer's almost here. You're like, yeah, great,
Yes. Yeah.
but like underneath that there's like sinisterness, there's
Oh yeah. Especially
playfulness,
that
there's
song.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that like that is all to say that like your like origin story, so to speak,
Yeah.
like makes perfect sense when you
I
look
think
at it
so.
through those lenses.
Yeah.
And I'm curious too, like, okay, so uh how does like the formation of the band sort of come together with all of the folks that you kind of started playing with?
Yeah.
what i
So
what I don't know is like, did you start sort of writing songs on your own and then bring people in later, or was
yeah,
it
I think
like,
I had a few that I was like trying out.
okay.
Um, at that time, I was living with Jesse was living I was living with my girlfriend, and like so we were in one apartment. Jesse was upstairs, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Prince from Mahogany, you know that
Mm-hmm.
band?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He was upstairs too living. And we got on really well just like for our gaga love of music and
Yeah.
sound, all this kind of stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um so we were kind of just like trying stuff out, and like Andrew Prince was always really into like um almost like academic avant-garde music, and
Okay.
he was a trained, I think, cellist, and and so he would really compose music, and so
Hmm.
which is like totally not who I was, but we could communicate and we can do things
Mhm.
together. And that was great. So we started just kind of effing around with like simple, like acoustic songs or whatever, and just trying to write like, and we would literally go like, let's try to write like a 3-minute pop song right now. And so
Mhm.
we would just
Okay.
kind of like do these like little exercises, and some songs would be like really good. Usually they're like inane lyrics, like I saw you get off the bus. I wanted to cuss or something. We'd just be making shit up like on the spot. But they were like melodic, and I was like, oh, this is pretty good. So I do remember those little experimentations with Andrew. I was kind of thinking like, oh, maybe I could do a lot more with this. And I knew
Mhm.
Andrew was like very focused on mahogany, and that was very much like, oh, I'm trying to think who he loved, but kind of like Hacienda, New Order, era,
Yeah,
or maybe
short
even
shorts and a
Joy Division-ish
Technicolor
stuff.
shirt.
I don't know. It was like,
Yeah,
and
okay.
like art school, and he was onto his own path and wanted
Okay.
to do that. So he wouldn't be a choice to pull into this.
Right. Right.
Um, but Jesse, he's a phenomenal drummer, and I always loved
Mhm.
playing with him. And so we were just like, and we knew Eric wouldn't make sense of this, because Eric, if you said play a G, like he wouldn't know what that means.
Right.
But if you
Right.
said like make it sound like a lion just got stepped on by a dinosaur, he could do that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
that was his brilliance. And and I always kind of thought like maybe I could work it in there. Maybe we could have worked it in there, but we wouldn't separate. So basically, I think there was a chance with uh the gentleman known as Gene Corduroy. I think. Oh, at the time I was like, I was producing the flamboyant rapper Esquire, who's
Okay.
known amongst like deep like
Yep.
Detroit heads.
Yep. Shout out
Uh,
Kevin.
yeah, shout out Kevin. And so I did love doing that. We were playing shows with just like me and Kevin, and like I would produce these kind of maximalist, like very De La Soul, kind of inspired, Prince Paul inspired
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
production behind his stuff. But
Hmm.
at the same time, because we were in Detroit, I was like sampling a lot of like just early disgusting like garage stuff, and like
Right.
just mixing all into that. And so that was a lot of fun, but I really did want to write songs, and so we were doing that for a while. And then I got, this is so much shit, but I got a high school friend to take over for me to be his like DJ. And so that,
Hmm.
and then as soon as I was like, oh, I could kind of step away from this and maybe work on this music I want to start a pop band. And so Kevin Boyle is Gene Corduroy, and he was just some guy that we would be bumping into. I think he was friends with Kevin Esquire, actually, maybe.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Hmm.
But there was just like in a scene of people that we liked, and I just liked him as a person,
Hmm. He's
and
like the sweetest guy ever. So
sweetest guy, and
yeah.
I just liked him, and I knew that he owned a guitar and could play some chords, and so it was. I remember it was like me, him, and Jesse,
Hmm.
and I wrote. Um, I can't think of it. I want to take you out in your holiday sweater, which is a really
Hmm.
Pascal song.
Hmm.
And I had the chords and like the basic melody or something like that. And we just sat down and like kind of strummed it and tried to go through it. And I think he did some lead lines. I was like, that's good. And I was like, let's start a band. And it was kind of
Yeah.
like that. And I remember
Yeah.
Jesse's like, let's write down everything we want to do. And I was like, that's silly. He's like, no, if we write it down, it's going to happen. And like, we were like, we're going to start a pop band. We're going to, put out singles, and then we're going to put out, he was just like, we're going to play shows, we're going to tour, we're
Yeah.
going to play
You're
South by
manifesting.
Southwest. Yeah. And so we just wrote down all this stuff, and then we did it,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah. I
kind of how
love
that
that.
happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like aside from the music, which is, I think I've like shared my affinity to those records and uh just your like ability to kind of like come up with these very melodic but sort of abstract still
Yeah.
compositions. Like the visual component of the band was obviously like an important factor as well. And I'm
Oh,
just
yeah.
kind of like, there's obviously the well, maybe not obvious to people who aren't familiar, but like you guys had these pseudonyms,
Oh, yeah.
like you already mentioned Gene Corduroy,
Yes.
Nathaniel Burgundy, who I went to college with.
Oh, I didn't
Uh,
know that. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Matt and I were we went to Central
Yeah,
together. Richard Panic, and then you were
yeah,
Casimir Pascal. Like
yeah.
the sort of like again, and I don't want to like be reductive here, but like sort of the Wes Anderson-ishness of it, the kind of
Yeah.
like
I don't know if we
proper.
knew who that was at the
Right,
time,
right, right,
but
exactly. But just for people who might not be familiar, like that might be a
yeah,
good kind of
but yeah,
visual
people would.
cue. But
I've seen people write that. You
but
know, the
where
just a
does the
real
world
quick
been?
side
Yeah,
note
yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
on that. I just remembered when you're telling me. I was like, why do we have all these names? I remember because I was still in Asha Vida. I was kind of like still on the edge of Asha Vida, and
Hmm.
and there's a part of me that wanted my real name attached to something that I thought was serious music.
Right, 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 right.
And then so Casimir Pascal, not my real name,
Hmm.
uh, is my dad's name, my brother's name, my son's name, my brother's son's name. So it's a
Okay.
big family name,
Yeah, that's cool.
and so it was important to me. But yeah, so I didn't want my real name associated with Pascal because I kind of at first I did kind of think it would just be like this fun, silly little twee band. I really like it would just be like a throwaway thing, and then I could focus on more serious music because I kind
Hmm.
of was like maybe I would be more like a composer. But
Hmm.
I'm so untrained and dumb, and it's like it's kind of crazy that I was thinking like I had this serious music like to follow or something. But I really did kind of think like I didn't need schooling. I didn't need to understand like
Hmm.
I could do this. And so that's really why the pseudonyms. That's why I came up with the pseudonym because I also had a pseudonym like with Esquire. So it's like I was retaining my real name for
Yeah.
serious music.
Well, there's like a protective element to that, which maybe
Yeah.
like you wasn't like, or maybe it was, but it could potentially not have been like as obvious to you at the time,
Yeah.
I understand maybe the like I was known for this and now I'm
Yeah.
doing this other thing, but it's kind
Yeah.
of not what I was known for. So let me
Yeah.
just like create a little space between. So if this thing crashes and burns, it's
Yeah.
like, oh, that was not that's
Yeah.
Casimir
No, I think
Pascal. That's
that's
not me,
true. 100%.
you know.
I think that
But maybe
was
it
'cause
wasn't thought through. I don't know,
yeah.
But
And that's like in its really early, first, few months or whatever. And then that the kind of more Asha Vida brain started like infecting the Pascals, you know.
sure. Well, I'm
And
curious about
you know,
the world building kind of aspect to like what you were doing, whether you would
mhm,
like categorize that it like that or not, is I guess we could debate. But like I feel like, at the time, like that was sort of a thing in Detroit
yeah,
to an extent, but the way you went about it, it was completely the opposite, I feel like, of what a lot of other bands were
yeah,
doing. And it was more, I don't know, like I think like if you were jealous of what you guys were doing, you might like say like, oh, this is just some like intellectual aristocratic, like
yeah,
hoity-toity, like we're fucking having our
yeah.
record covers look like we're feasting on this
Yes, yes,
food, and there's
yes,
like
yes,
nudity and there's this like
yes.
whatever. But like for me,
Yeah,
I saw it as more funny and like kind of
yeah,
like you
yeah,
said, subversive, and like there's a sense of humor to it. And so
yeah.
I'm curious, like what,
It's
how
all of
how
that
any of that
actually.
like
It's
resonates with
all it's
you?
all of that. It was
Yeah.
like it was super serious, but if pushed, it was pretty silly. I did, uh, I growing up in like a very blue collar household, like I started creating like as a young kid like a romance with like guys in tweed coats, like
Hmm.
intellectuals in movies and things like
Hmm.
that, and you know those were the characters like like they would be like the most unimportant character in some movie and I'd glom onto them.
Hmm.
It's like
Hmm.
I'm like I don't know why, but I just kind of as also like a high school student, I felt really stupid. Like I didn't I went to like all boys Catholic school, like, and everybody was like really really smart, and there's a bunch of stuff like that, and like so a lot of that was kind of like real and aspirational in
Hmm.
a way from coming from meager means. Like I I would go to thrift stores and buy like Brooks Brothers suits and stuff like, like
Hmm.
stuff that my family would never wear nor even know what it is, if it's good, bad, but like I knew that those were like labels that mattered. And, so
Yeah.
there, so some of that myth making was fun. Some of it was like truly like aspirational. I think I still kind of do it today a little bit, and
Sure.
it's
Sure.
fun these days.
Hmm.
You know, I think I've kind of grown into it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's like as like a 20-something kid from Detroit, like whose dad was like a fireman. It's like it didn't really make sense at all. But yeah, we were always kind of like on the periphery. We were never quite in a scene. Like Asha Vida was as close as we were, but we still weren't doing like shoot. Like I hated any band that tried to sound um like Flying Saucer Attack, or like
Hmm.
or bigger ones like My Bloody Valentine or something.
Slow
Like
dive.
anybody,
Yeah.
yeah, Slow Dive especially. Like
Yeah.
anybody like aping that stuff, like I was like, fuck that. I don't want, like that's not what I want to do. And so because of that, I always felt we were on the edges of this stuff.
Right.
And then when we were doing Pascal, we really were getting pushed towards the edge, because then all the garage stuff was kind of coming up. And
Sure.
so
Sure.
you know, the great thing was though, we held our own within that scene, and
Hmm.
you know, we got those 300 people to come see us. I was
Yeah.
talking about
Well, and
earlier.
you
Yeah.
were able to kind of like, whether it was conscious or not, like you were able to sort of like jump in and out of those things,
Yeah.
because I think, no matter what genre, like if you talk to Jack White or
Yeah.
whoever,
Yeah.
like at the end of the day, like that dude just wants to write good songs too. You know what I mean?
Yes, and we were
And
all
so
listening to a lot of the same records and stuff like that.
exactly.
And I bet you
So
he loves Bowie as much as I love Bowie, and he
exactly.
probably likes Can as much as I like Can, and
I'm
so
sure he does. Yeah,
all that stuff.
absolutely. Yeah. So there's really like on the paper, it seemed like things were super different, but
Yeah,
in practice and definitely like, if you were able to, get a view into everybody's like record
yeah.
collection, you would see a ton of
We'd all go
commonality there,
see
right?
each other's bands too.
Well,
It's
sure.
like,
Yeah.
so it was like I said, because there's only 300 of us, so we're all, there's only so
Right.
much. But like, yeah, I think we'd all support each other and all go see each other's bands, and we just when there was a lot of people all in each other's bands, we were our own little world a lot of
Hmm.
times.
Yeah.
So, and it was fine. So I think, but because of that, we kind of created our own little world. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, because there wasn't like a larger thing for us. I kind of, and our band was getting really big, with people,
Yeah. No, I
we'd
mean,
play with like 8 people. We'd have violinists and stuff like that. It
you were
started getting crazy.
collective, at a
Yeah.
certain point,
It
but
was getting really nuts.
yeah,
Hard to make
well,
money.
sure. Yeah, well, I can tell you with four people in a band, it was also hard to make
I
money.
bet. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but it was a very exciting time, and
Yeah.
both of our bands, were kind of happening at a similar time, and
Yeah.
I don't remember. I'm sure we played together,
I think we did. Yeah, I feel
and
like probably at San. Not no no no. That's
Magic
Magic
Stick
Stick. I
probably,
think so. I remember
and
something.
yeah, and whether it was like a, holiday thing where it was like more of a
Could have been
review,
that,
or
which I
or
loved
if it
that.
was like a real show, I don't
You know.
know if I can recall. And Trevor, who
Yep.
I was in a band with called Red Shirt Brigade,
Love them.
and was
Yeah.
my roommate in college, like I was obviously like, oh shit, Trevor's in this band now, and like
Yeah.
wanted to support him too, and felt like a little bit more connected because I knew him, and I knew
Yeah.
Matt, I
Yeah.
knew,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then obviously met all of you, and I we were playing very drastically different music at the
Sure.
time, but there was a commonality in that we both really didn't fit,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
and so I'm curious, and then we can kind of move on to kind of more current times, but
Sure.
like, um it was an exciting time, and I'm just like curious about like your, like, hindsight, I guess, or your 20 plus years removed from that era. Like, do you think back on it fondly? Like, what are some
Yes.
of your like thoughts
Yeah.
about that time and the Detroit music scene specifically?
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely look back at it fondly. When you mentioned Zoots, that's one of those places that like I remember us playing, and like it was a great little festival of odd misfit bands and stuff like
Hmm.
that. But the place was packed, and it was such a fun weekend, and I remember sitting there being like 22 or whatever, and I remember going like, this is my summer of love.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This is what summer of love is. And I was so like overjoyed by it.
Mhm,
I was usually pretty good about being a young person, being aware of what was happening when it was happening, so like I could be happy about those things in the moment. And
mhm,
so now when I look back on it, it's like, yeah, I definitely look back as fond moments. And like, I love that. I love the scene. I love, you know, I started thinking about like sometimes even writing for and I do it sometimes now
mhm.
where like I'm like I'll play a bar and like you get a vibe of it and you're like, oh, it'd be really cool is if we opened it up with like a real moody thing with like maybe an old like drum machine, I'll just write it, and like
Yeah.
I remember back then, like sometimes I would like I remember kind of like thinking about the Zoots crowd and me going like, I'm gonna write something just for like these kids, like,
Right, 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 right.
yeah, I mean, I was one of those kids, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember thinking about it, like, yeah, this will get them, this will be fun,
Mhm.
and so it was great because it was inspiring me to do more, and
Right.
so like for the longest time I was in my own little world, and I've always been like, even though I have like a family of six, because there's a big age gap, like me being
Mhm.
the closest one to me is 10 years older.
10, right, yeah.
Yeah, so I was kind of always by myself a lot of times. And so I enjoy that. Like I even these
Yeah.
days, like I spend a lot of time just in my studio, which is right behind this wall.
Mhm.
I'm by myself and I need that time. But it is magical when you go out and you were inspired by like the people around you and like things
Absolutely.
going on around you. And so that's what I remember about Detroit. So it's a bunch of
Yeah.
really amazing moments to me. Like I don't I not nothing too bad at all.
Yeah, I mean, just to, like, I guess, put a tidy bow on it, like,
Mm,
m I felt like there was this initial, like, um, focused attention on the city all of a sudden,
yeah. Oh yeah.
kind of post White Stripes and the Von Bondies and some of these other bands
Yeah.
kind of getting big, and I always felt like, yeah, this is cool, but like it's really not representative of the entire
No, it's really
music
scratching the
scene.
surface. Yeah.
And so when you kind of came along with Pascal, and I mean, there's a lot of bands like Judah Johnson,
Oh yeah.
was
Yeah.
maybe another one. Um, and I can make, a list a mile long, New Granada. I mean, there's tons of these bands that
Yeah.
like weren't
Yeah.
doing the garage thing, but weren't getting like sort of recognized for being excellent in their own right.
Yes.
But then all of a sudden there started this sort of shift where the sort of there was more room, for
Yeah.
bands like Thunderbirds, for bands like Pascal to
Yeah. Yeah.
exist. And I feel like that was the most exciting time where like things kind of like widened out a little bit, and didn't mean
Yeah.
that like necessarily more like it definitely went from like 300 people to 1,000 or
Yeah.
2,000 or
Sure.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like it felt very exciting to me at the time because all of a sudden more sounds were being kind of like let into the room, and more,
Yeah.
like, no, and that's like no disrespect to those bands,
Oh yeah.
that were
Right.
doing
Yeah.
the sort of garage thing, but there it sort of became its own like little indie scene that sort of had to like scrape and claw to like, hey,
Yes.
we're
Yeah.
worth
Yeah.
paying attention to as well.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
put you
Yeah.
guys kind of at the top of that, like, heap of bands because you were just so good. Like, I
Thank
mean, you
you.
could strip away the outfits and the
Yeah.
aesthetic, and like the songs themselves were the thing that I think kept people engaged, so
Yeah.
I appreciate that era, and I have bands like Pascal and songwriters like you to thank for like pushing that more, and just like showing people like there's more to the city than just this one thing that you think,
Sure. Yeah.
is
Yeah.
happening right now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
obviously there's, the musical history of Detroit is vast, but
Yeah. Yeah.
um so you make some fantastic records with Pascal. You guys do what, we were sort of trying to do as well. You're playing, festivals, and
Yeah.
whether it's local or you're going down South by, I assume you played CMJ and
Yeah. Oh
shit
yeah. I
like
love
that,
that. Yeah.
so like,
Uh-huh.
I can understand what all that was about, because
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to do it too. But at a certain point, that starts to go on the decline, and it gets a little
Yes.
bit harder, and people are like, I don't know if I can, like survive on ramen
Oh
noodles
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
Taco
yeah,
Bell all
yeah.
the time, and or maybe I want to do something different musically or whatever. But the band obviously at some point sort of comes to a close.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then I don't know how soon after the band kind of wrapped things up. I don't know like the timeline exactly from when you moved to Chicago from Detroit,
Yeah.
but just talk to me about that era, like post Pascal,
Yes.
pre like getting back to music. Like, what were you spending your time doing? I
Yeah.
already mentioned it maybe at the top with kids and stuff, but like what was happening in that sort of in that version of your timeline, and were you still like writing and creating and just kind of not
Yes.
sharing? Like, what was that
Yes.
all about?
No, well, I think one of the unique things, um, I got married in 1999.
Yeah.
So Pascal kind of started around 2002. Maybe we
And
put
you
out.
had your kids
That's what I'm
like
saying. So like
in
we,
that
we
time
started
period, right?
having kids in 2001, then we had another
Right.
in 2003.
Hmm.
So all through Pascal, I had little kids. Like I
Yep.
wrote all the Pascal stuff. A lot of stuff. I actually remember holding like my daughter or
Yeah, yeah,
whatever and working on those records and things like that.
yeah,
So, so that that also kind of kept me. I wasn't necessarily a scenester. I would go and see a few bands here and there, but I was usually out when we had gigs.
yeah.
The
Hmm.
band, like Panic, who's Gerald Rosser, like he was a scenester. Like there were people in the band that were definitely, or Matt,
Yeah,
Nathaniel Berg,
everybody for sure.
like those people are out and about doing stuff, and so I kind of felt like, okay, we have some representatives. Like I don't have to, like I could be like a family guy, and
Yeah.
like I had a day job, and so but I was like the main songwriter too, so I had a lot kind of on my shoulders in a way for like a young dumb guy, and so when the band split up, it happened actually when we finally finished our full length record. So, which it took probably like 2 or 3 years,
Hmm.
like I would write and rewrite and re-record, and like when
You
I
made
would write,
that at home too, right? Like,
yeah, I made that. So I
yeah.
totally built I completely fucked up a perfectly good garage. like I mean, even like removing like the garage door and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Sound, I taught myself how to sound. I read all these books and like soundproofed, and like I didn't know anything about carpentry, but I built all this stuff by hand, and like
Yeah.
had floating walls and everything like that. So I took a lot of time to do that, and then I built up gear, taught myself how to use it, because before that I was using like a lot of 4-tracky kind of
Hmm.
stuff,
Hmm.
and then yeah, and so then I'm writing all these songs, and like I would I would do full demos, like when I bring them to the band, and this is kind of like what probably made the band like kind of fall apart, because I would write a song and I would do the drums, the bass, the guitar, Rhodes, and
Hmm. I'm
sing.
I'm familiar. I'm familiar with this
Okay,
disease
and
that you
then I would
described.
give it to. I'd be like, "Hey, what do you guys want to contribute?" They're like, "It's done."
Nothing.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so that wasn't always like probably the best experience for people that are totally talented, and.
Hmm.
But I just had like a certain like I knew how things should go, and like I had the best drummer in Detroit, and I
Hmm.
was writing the drum parts, which is kind of
Hmm.
ridiculous, kind
Hmm.
of silly,
Yeah.
but it was so intricate in what I was like, a drum bit might have something to do with the way I sing and stuff like that. So it was like
No, I mean, you're a visionary person, and so like,
it just all
I'm gonna
came
I'm
at
gonna
once.
defend you. I'm gonna
Okay,
defend you
okay, okay.
here.
But I could
No,
see why
yeah,
I don't think I was personally like difficult. Like I
yeah,
wasn't an asshole, but I don't think I was probably like allowing them a lot to contribute. So like
sure, sure.
that album, it's like it is kind of nutty. Like I felt like things were slowly, where it was the band was growing in order to perform the songs, but
Hmm.
the amount of contribution was going smaller and smaller and smaller. So,
Yeah.
so the band kind of ended that way. But it was just at the moment where I got a job offer that was literally paying me double, and like up until that point, and 2 kids, wife, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's like we lived check to check. Like we had no money, and so like I had to accept this job, and it literally
Hmm.
paid me exactly double of what I was getting paid in Detroit to move to Chicago. So we had to do
Mhm.
it. So all this kind of stuff was happening, and so the band broke up just as the album was getting released.
Yeah.
And I remember we played one more show at
Would that have been the release
Majesty.
show?
I don't know if it's really. I think we maybe had a proper release show, maybe.
I feel
Don't
like I was
remember.
there.
Okay, and then there was like one more opportunity to play, and like at that point, everybody was pissed at everybody, and mostly me, I guess. But I remember Jesse, who's like my closest bud, like he's like, I'm not playing drums. It's like fuck. And then I yeah, so I had to get a drummer.
Who did you get to play?
Um, the fellow, you know, that band Bandao. Um,
Yes.
what is there? Johnny Headband Bros. You know
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Keith, is that?
Yeah, I got Keith.
Yeah,
No, not Keith. His brother. I'm sorry, his name is escaping me. I wish you
yeah.
could edit this out because I love this guy.
No, that's okay.
But
He'll
Keith's
never
brother.
hear it anyway.
Okay, good. Keith's brother. Don't listen to this. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I'm blanking. But anyway, so he was kind enough to learn all the songs, which were not easy,
Yeah, no.
and he's fucking. He's just so much fun to play with. And then Vincent, who played bass in Gardens, played
Yep.
bass because like Matt Burgundy hated me. You know, it was like this whole crazy like it was a very big blow up, and then I moved. You know, and so it just kind of blew up, and it was good. It just kind of was its time. It just ended in
I,
a
I remember
ridiculous
that
fashion.
show, honestly.
Yeah.
And his name is Chad, by the way.
Thank you, Chad
Yeah.
Thompson. My bad. Yeah. Love you, Chad.
Yeah. Shout out Chad. Shout out Keith. Uh,
Shout out Band Out. It's a great band.
legendary Johnny Headband.
Yeah, that's so good. But anyway, so we played like one last show and it was great. And
Yeah.
and a little bit I was like, oh, I could play with other people. Like I don't like, you know, I used to think of a band as a gang, but that was like my first moment of like I could pull people together and we could do this. Like this
Yeah.
is
Okay.
and then I moved, you know?
Mhm.
And then so and that's around 2008, 2009. And then I have a nephew who is at the time was like this young little badass guitarist. Um, and he was having troubles in Detroit. And his mom called me, my sister, and was like, can he live with you? And so he moved in, and then we started a little
That's
duo.
right. That's right.
Yeah,
Casimir and Casimir. Is
Catherine
that what
Costa.
it's called? Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and that was that was fun because I kind of took that kind of Asha Vida inspired pop thing, and I try to push it even farther.
Yeah.
And my nephew was just great because he was just like he was like my little experiment that I would just feed him music.
Hmm.
And like he would just love everything, and then like he could play anything. He was great,
Cool.
and so we've been making music nonstop ever since that moment. So like he's in my solo thing now,
Right. Okay.
and he's someone who doesn't love writing music, but he is the best interpreter. Like whatever I play, he plays it exactly how it is or better.
Okay.
So he's just a very solid guy to have, especially as a bass player.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we
Okay.
did,
So he plays bass on a lot of
yeah, he
your
plays
solo
bass, and
stuff.
so
Yeah. Lots of cool bass lines and great,
yeah,
just like good tones and like thoughtful. Like I was listening to the EP today, and there was like one point where like I feel like the bass sort of like followed the vocal melody in this like way, and I
yes.
was just like, oh, that's cool, like. So I
So
was
check us out.
unsure
The
if it
the
was, yeah,
bass in the solo stuff is a family thing. So as I'm getting older, like I am like trying to delegate here and there. Like so, my solo thing, I love it. I write all the songs. I play the drums, the guitar, the piano. I sing, do all that stuff. But every so often, like I have this my brother Chris, who's like a phenomenal musician and a really great bass player, and so he plays some of those basses on
oh,
there.
okay, cool, cool.
And then sometimes I re-record what he wrote just so that it matches the sound and the
Mhm.
tone that I want and stuff like that. But like so yeah, some of that might be his brilliance. I don't know. So
Cool.
it's a mishmash. So like Vince, my nephew might play some of it. A lot of times I'm writing it, but I might have these guys play it because they have a better feel or whatever. They
Hmm.
can do things quicker or
Yeah.
more melodic or just a better, better feel and stuff like that. So, yeah, with the bass, I kind of like throw that to other people sometimes.
Yeah.
Like if I feel like I'm exhausted, I given this song everything I can,
Yeah.
I feel like doing. So, but yeah, so him and I, we started Casimir and Casimir. We got signed to a little label by one of the XL recordings that I think put out the first White Stripes stuff.
Hmm.
Like that label boss started his own thing called Brill.
Hmm.
And so we put out records. The records mostly came out in Europe and things like that. Like we were in like a European underwear commercial and stuff like that. And so that was cool for a couple years, and then the label folded like quickly after, and then there was kind of like a dead period where I was just like, but I've always done this thing where I'll work a full day at work, have dinner with my family, and then I steal away to my to my study, no, to my studio, and I just work on music, and I just always every day work on it every single day. And I remember
Awesome.
hearing about writers who do that, who they just pick a block of time and they write.
Yeah.
And it might be a book, it might be they just, and so if I'm not working on a song in some aspect, if I'm not writing a song, then I don't know, maybe teaching myself a plugin or
Hmm.
I don't know, studying microphone technique or something. I just put myself in that space, and like every single day, it's just like my other job. And
Well,
so like,
it's a muscle, you're
yeah,
exercising it, and like you're not letting it atrophy, and
yeah,
you're, whether it doesn't have to, like, I'm super into like working out, but
yeah.
so like, like
You look great. By the way.
oh, thanks. But like the uh changing it up, and doing something like slightly like Mondays I might like lift weights, and then
Yes.
Tuesdays I'm gonna run or whatever.
Yeah.
So like, it's all like part of the same thing, and
Yeah.
there's like, not to bring up Guided by Voices again, but like Robert Pollard like looks at songwriting as this almost like athletic
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
exercise,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
it's like I'm, not only is it like I'm flexing my, songwriting muscle on a daily
Yeah.
basis, but I'm also like trying to best myself,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like I'm in
Yeah.
competition with myself. And I
Sure.
can, really relate to that. And I'm not sure if that's something that like is sewn into your experience as well, but I can definitely like, relate to what you're saying.
Yeah.
Uh, but what I guess I'm curious about is like, so how does the daily like practice kind of finally go to back sort of like, okay, like
Yeah.
now, I did the Pascal phase,
Yeah.
and then the Casimir and Casimir phase kind of happens, and
Yes.
then there's maybe a little bit of downtime, but now Craig is finally like solo artist.
Yes.
Like, how did you come to like sort of decide like, okay, now it's time for me to start
Okay.
getting
So
this out into the world?
there's a little in between part there. So like my
Yeah.
daughter is a songwriter too. So
Right,
my
right,
daughter
right.
is 24 now.
Hmm.
But when she was in high school, she started writing songs, and she just didn't have the means to like create them. And so we collaborated on a bunch of stuff. So probably from her, junior to her time in college, we were working on singles, and that was really
Hmm.
good. And I actually have Nod on Trevor Nod on one of my favorite ones that we did,
Oh,
but
sweet.
it was
I listened to some of that today, actually.
okay.
Yeah,
And
it's super good. It's like
I love
very.
taking all my ideas that I would normally put into my songs
Hmm.
and doing it in like an Ariana Grande style
Right.
song.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I really and that opened my mind up in that I started listening to people like Ariana Grande and like
Hmm.
Olivia Rodrigo and all this kind of shit, and
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
just
Yeah.
kind of getting into like their songwriters and what they were, the people that were producing those records, and just kind of giving getting an appreciation for that kind of style of
Hmm.
songcraft. Like, and so my between Casimir Pascal and my solo stuff, it was like working with my daughter, and like,
Hmm.
she moved to Chicago, she played book club, and like, I was like, okay, you're good. you can do this, you
Okay.
know? And so
Yeah.
there was a little bit of like, we were collaborating, I was helping her out. And then I was like, okay, you can do this now. Like, go forth if you want to, or
Hmm.
don't. But, you know, you don't necessarily need me. And maybe you should find somebody in the Chicago world, you know, that like you collaborate with. But like, you know, I kind of felt like, okay, I did like a parental thing
Yeah. Yeah.
in the songwriting kind of thing. And so like, and we still collaborate. She has a track with this fantastic rapper named, his name is Zaire, but his, you know, official like hip hop name is Desire. It's D'_ZAIRE, and he is a
Okay. Cool.
phenomenal. He's a phenomenal talent, and they've collaborated on a number of songs, and so all three of us worked on something that's coming out. So I still do that. But there's this moment of maybe 2 years ago that I was just like, okay, she's good.
Yeah.
And it's like I have to start doing my thing again, because like
Yeah.
I was writing songs all along and just not, and I was just like literally like just piling these songs up. So this EP in a way is kind of like, you know, it's just a pile of songs that were like sitting around that I was like I should do something with.
Hmm.
And but I had this idea, like we put out her song in like December, and I was like, I think I'm gonna put a band together, and I'm going to start putting these songs out, and we're going to play these songs like that I wrote, you know,
Yeah.
that I've been
Yeah.
sitting on. So that kind of jump started it. So, you know, the EP is like 7 songs, and there's other ones that I just wasn't really happy with. I probably could have did an album, but I was just like,
Okay.
I'm happy with these 7.
Because you have singles that you put out kind of prior to the
Yeah,
EP over the last couple of years too, right?
yeah, there's enough there, and
Yeah.
but it's kind of like a transitional thing. And so now I feel like, so now I have a, you know, I'm probably at like 8 new brand new
Oh,
songs
cool.
away from
Good.
that.
Awesome. Yeah.
And so and I feel like I'm really honed in on something, you know, where a lot of the songs are written all within a few months of each other rather than years, you know, apart from
Okay.
each other.
Right.
So there's even though they might sound different, there's just some cohesiveness going
Hmm.
on. So um and so that's where I'm at today. And so like, you know, it's funny because when we play live, we've been playing pretty regularly
Hmm.
in Chicago. And I'm almost not playing anything from the EP because it's fun trying out the new songs, and it also makes me go like, oh, that's too slow, or you know what, I'm going to cut that one part out because it just doesn't serve its purpose
Yeah.
that I thought it
Yeah.
would. You know, like once you get it in front of people, and
Yeah.
so I'm kind of like
Which you weren't
workshopping
doing,
songs.
which you were
No,
not doing leading up to like this batch of
no,
songs, and now you're
and
kind of like
I never
on the other
have,
side
and
of it.
that, you know,
Okay.
in a
Okay.
way that's problematic because it's like I get too in my own world, and then things get maybe overwrought and just like over thought out, and like, and so anyway, so yeah, this group of song I feel like it's a little bit more like um just kind of like letting whatever comes out, you know,
Yeah.
and like some of them are weirder than others, some are just like straight pop songs, and it's just like I'm kind of at this age where it's just like I'm just like it is whatever I'm writing. I don't give a fuck about like
Yeah. It's the great.
genres
It's
or
the
anything.
greatest, right? Like,
Yeah, it's great. It's very liberating. It's kind of, I mean, I feel like I always kind of did that,
sure.
but maybe I was more worried or upset with someone would think, or you know, even like my own band, like presenting them stuff, I'd be
Hmm.
worried. And now I'm just like, if I really like it, I'm just really happy about it, and
Well, I
that's
think when you're like, I'm gonna put my name on this, right? Like,
yeah,
there's a lot. I think maybe like, um, people don't think about these types of things very deeply,
yeah,
but I certainly do, and I feel like, if you're gonna put your name on something, like you really are like fully like saying to anybody who cares and listens, like,
yeah,
I'm being vulnerable now, like I'm
yeah,
not.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And I don't want to like frame it as like hiding behind something, because a band is a collective of people and you want to put that sort of
Yeah.
like out there, and like indicate at least like this is like the result of multiple people's influences and
Yeah.
skill sets or whatever, like making this thing. And I can sort of again relate to what you're talking about, because the last few things that I've put out, of songs that like I'm writing and singing,
Yeah.
were solo records that I just played everything on.
Right.
And
Yeah.
now I'm playing I have a band as well that like it's still like, my name and the other
Yeah, yeah,
people, kind of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers
yeah,
situation. But like the songs we're working on now, we're working on together, and it
yeah,
is that kind of like, well, you know, I might like demo it a certain way, but like if you're gonna interpret it in the way you're gonna interpret it, or just want to do
yeah,
something
yeah.
completely different, like do it, because
Right.
who cares? Like at this
Yeah,
point,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
like as long as like we're into it, like that's really all that matters. And and
yeah,
and I think
yeah,
there's something very freeing about that, and especially with like, being in your late 40s or early 50s or whatever, and
yeah.
still doing it. It's like you've already crossed the threshold where it's probably uncool to most people, and like
Yes. Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
like whatever, like I'm not
yeah,
doing this to be cool. I'm doing this to be creative, so
yeah. No, and
so I
yeah, a lot of the news songs, it's like, they're slower.
Mhm,
It's just like, I've always loved ballads, and so
mhm.
like I'm kind of not caring if I'm writing ballad after ballad these days, like where I
Yeah.
would, and I don't know how that's gonna work out, but I don't really care. I mean, I'm really just like writing these songs and like some of and I really, even if there's a lot of tongue in cheek stuff, almost every single song I write, there's a moment where as I'm writing, I cry, and
Good. That's
sometimes
good.
it's like I'm happy. Sometimes it's like certain lyric that just like hits
Hmm.
me or whatever, and this new set of songs has a lot more frequent moments like that.
Yeah,
It's just
cool.
like I'm just so like deeply invested, and
Yeah.
that's why I'm now using all four of my names.
Nice.
Like,
Well, I
not
mean, I
just
think
three.
the EP is fantastic, and I think that people who are familiar with Pascal will find something in there that
Yeah.
there's a connection point, but it's also going in a sort of forging its own path, and it sounds like the new batch is even doing that further. And so like I'm
Yeah,
super
I think
excited
so.
to hear
Yeah.
it, and I'm excited for you that you're excited about it, because I think
Yes.
that's something that like can very easily go away, especially right now with like the chaos of the world. Like
Yes.
finding joy in things can be very challenging. And so if you're finding that joy or that moment of like,
Oh yeah.
this is affecting me emotionally, and to the point where like I'm like outwardly
Yeah.
displaying emotion about it, like there's
Yes.
something so incredible and special about that.
Yes.
And I love to hear that, because that makes me not feel like I'm a weirdo when
No,
I have those same moments.
yeah. I I actually always feel super lucky that I've had music ever since I was pretty young. Because when I was in high school and feeling dumb, I always did in my brain go like, but I could write a song, like, and so
Yeah,
like
right.
it has really gotten me through a lot of crazy moments in my life and like just kind of difficult things where it's given me a sort of a shield, and it's built like some real confidence and over the years. And it's nice because I I would love people to like enjoy whatever I do, but it's not why I do it. It is really self-serving. Like I just
Mhm.
and I've kind of been like this always. It's like I just want to write something that like turns me on, that I think is good, and
Right.
then I'll share it with people. And if they think it's good, it's so awesome. And so often no one gives a shit, but I don't give a shit either.
Yeah,
It's
right.
like but I'm fucking loving it, and so like, and because of that. I'm super successful. I'm super
Yeah,
lucky,
yeah.
and
No,
so
the success and like, the like, I don't know. I feel like when I when I get down on myself,
yeah,
whether it's like, oh, I didn't run this race as fast as I wanted to, or I put the song out and maybe like people didn't like respond to it in the
yeah,
way that I was hoping or whatever. It's like you have to remind yourself like you're doing things that most people cannot do or don't want to invest the time in doing. Like
yeah,
I run with a friend of mine sometimes, and we're like, oh God, like this fucking sucks. Like we're
yeah, yeah,
just
yeah,
like
yeah,
dragging ass, or whatever. Like, but then you kind of are like, but look around. If everybody If this was so
Yes.
easy, there'd be a
Right.
thousand people running
Yeah.
right next to us, and there's
Yeah.
not, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
the same thing about songwriting. It's like if it was so easy, or if everybody could do it, then everybody would, you know,
Yeah.
and that's just not the case. So
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I'm curious about the team love thing, because um for people who don't know, you know, it's I guess maybe it isn't anymore, but Connor Oberst from Bright Eyes
Yeah.
is like related, and I think it's the label he started to release some of his friends' music and things like that. But like, how did you get hooked up with that? Like, were you sending demos and shit out, or did you know him,
Yeah,
or like what was
I
the
did.
whole?
So yeah, when I had a group of songs that I was like, okay, these are good songs. I should do something with them, and it's all happening in the same moment where I'm like, I want to put a band together to
Mhm.
play these songs live, and then I want to release the music. So, and I'm still old school where I'm like, I want some team because if I'm writing and producing and performing and doing all this stuff by myself, I want
Mhm.
at least maybe for the record, to be collaboration, the release of it to be some
Sure.
kind of collaboration. So yeah, I wrote a few people, didn't hear back, of course, from most, but Nathan runs Team Love, and him
Okay.
and Connor started. Nathan was Connor's longtime manager, and
Okay.
so, but yeah, somewhere along the line, Nathan, I think, just solely took it over, while Connor, like, I think there was moves and stuff like uh Nathan used to be in New York. Now he's maybe upper state or something. Like, there was all
Okay.
these moves. And so now him and this wonderful person named Autumn, who's on the West Coast, maybe in Portland, I forgot where.
Hmm.
But they kind of joint run it. And I think now Connor started something else up. And I think that was all happening just as I was getting on it.
Okay.
I think he was involved when I got on it, but then it quickly changed or something like that. But the cool thing about them is like they have the most eclectic, crazy roster, and it's
Hmm.
really just like anything that Nathan or Autumn like, you know, they like and appreciate. They're not trying to kind of build any kind of label cohesiveness or anything
Yeah.
like that. They're
Yeah.
just like, it could be a guy who just like plays the saw, or it could be like, whatever. It could be like a noise band. It could be a pop
Yeah.
band. They
I'm
they
like
just
looking at the website right now, just
yeah.
like, who is on this label
No,
actually?
and it could be like, we played um, with a guy named Jacob Augustin, and like he's got this amazing baritone, big voice, and he's like very folky, and they're just all over the map.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, I love that.
and
I mean, you know, some
yeah,
of that the best labels are, you know.
yeah, and so when I wrote them, I remember Nathan wrote back and said like, "Hey, I love all this stuff, but let's get on the phone and talk about it." So got on the phone with him and Autumn, and they're like, "Yeah, like we don't like Pitchfork and Stereo Gum. They don't like us. We don't have ins and anything, but like we just
Hmm.
like being a part of projects that we personally admire. If
Right.
you want some help, we're here to help you. We don't know how much we can help you.
Yeah. No,
It's just
I
that. But
mean,
I was just like, hey, I just want somebody on my side, just so I'm
mhm.
not figuring all this stuff out by myself.
Yeah.
And I don't like administrative tasks with music. Like I like making music. Like that's my
Hmm.
one thing I absolutely love. But like having to create content or whatever, or having to like figure out how distribution works. I'd rather have someone else focus on that. So
Well, it's good to know your strengths, and also
yes,
what you aren't strong in, and if someone's willing to, you know, like I mean, I use air quotes of like take a chance on you, but like
yeah,
if
yeah,
they're willing to like support you, you know, and they have an infrastructure to do so,
yeah,
what better situation
yeah.
could
So it's a
someone who
nice little.
only
It's
wants
like
to write
all
songs have, you know?
it's all friendly handshake kind of stuff. It's
Yeah.
nothing deep, dark or scary or So
Do
it's
you feel like it's like helped you in some ways, not just from like the admin side of it, but like is there a way to like relate the being on a label with like visibility or like I don't I imagine you're not like
Yeah,
submitting like a report every month of downloads and streams and giving a shit one way or the other. But like
yeah,
obviously they can supply you with that information if you wanted it. But like
yeah.
I'm
No,
just
we
saying
don't.
more just more on like a I don't know, just like are you knowledgeable of like your reach in any way, shape, or form?
No, not really. But I don't care either,
Yeah,
and they don't necessarily care either. It's
yeah,
just it's like we just want to like put things out and have it like hit people's ears, the most that we could muster up,
yeah,
But and they're just kind of like my pals in doing that. And
yeah,
so they're just like kind of like co-conspirators. It's just nice to have someone to bounce some ideas off of and like have some
yeah.
structure around a release and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's not necessary. I like it personally. I
Hmm.
like being able to bounce things off. I like both these people. They're super nice, they're smart, they give me ideas when I ask for some help, and it's like
Yeah.
just to have that kind of thing, it, it fills a certain void. Because I do, the one bad thing about, like, when you're just like, I'm just going to do everything on my own, you just get sometimes really caught up in your head, and I definitely have a tendency to get like really lost in there. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I like bouncing things off of somebody, even if it's like, 'cause you do it with bandmates normally,
Oh
like
yeah.
even if it's
Yeah.
like, how should I sequence the record or something like
Hmm.
that? What do you think about this? It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. No, I
and
think
even
it's
if I
good to
don't
have.
take their opinion, it's good to hear it, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, you can get out of your own head one way or the other,
Yeah,
right? Like either they're gonna make a suggestion that you don't agree with, but maybe you would never have like just being able to have that conversation in general,
yeah,
I think like frees you up and frees your brain up to kind of finally come to a decision on it one way or the other.
yeah,
It's like, oh yeah, like no, my original thought, I'm gonna go with that. But I
yeah.
appreciate
And
your
they're the kind of
opinion
people
on
that
it.
are just like supportive, like do whatever you want to do. Like we
Yeah,
we think they definitely are like the artist knows what they're doing,
yeah,
But if you
yeah.
could find a way where you could use us, let us know, So it's a
I'm
real
just
easy,
surprised.
friendly thing.
I'm surprised there's room for two Craigs on the label.
Yes, we got to, but
Craig
yeah,
Redrin being one of them, but
yeah, I know,
from
amazing, yeah,
one of my
yeah.
favorite
Oh,
bands,
I
sure
loved
to
them,
think.
yeah,
But
yeah,
well, let's kind of wrap it up here because I feel like
yeah. I got to
we
go to
could we
sleep.
could
It's
we
getting
could
late.
talk forever. Yeah, we're both of a certain age where
Yeah,
this is the sundowning time. But I am curious, like, um, I assume you still pay attention to like new music or just like
yeah.
what's
Uh-huh.
happening. So like this show is kind of about exposing people to like an artist that they might not be familiar with. But are there like
Yes.
bands or artists? It could be new, it could be old, whatever
Yeah.
that you are like into that you feel like more people should know about.
Well, we'll be playing with the Dead Beat Beat from Detroit, and so if you don't know them, now you
Hmm.
do.
Yeah,
We're
they're the
playing.
best band in the
I love
city. I
them. I
mean,
think they're
they're so
great.
good. Yeah,
So we're playing
they're
with them on June 28th at the Color Club,
in
but
Chicago,
in
right?
Chicago,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Because they're
But
touring. They just put a new record out. It's super good.
it's great. Love
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
But yeah, bands I've been really into lately. It's like I really love Aldous Harding. Like, do you know
Okay.
her?
Hmm.
Yeah, she's phenomenal. She's, I love she does, like sometimes people would say like about Pascal songs, like there's 5 songs in there. Uh, you know, and with her, sometimes she has like 5 voices in there, and
Right,
so
right.
like she'll have these little like 3-minute plays almost
Hmm.
with different characters, and so like I'm really like that. That really like makes me go kind of
That's
gaga.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I should listen to her more. I'm
Oh
familiar,
yeah.
but not like super familiar. So
Yeah. I think she's like one of my. Has been like my recent like probably like favorites like lately. There is an amazing scene in Chicago of like really young people doing amazing stuff
yep,
like Sharp Pins.
yep,
There's this
all that
guy,
stuff. Horse
Yeah, all
Girl.
that stuff's great. Horse Girl's great. There's this
Mhm.
young guy named Tom Henry who's great.
Mhm.
There's a fantastic dude named Joe
Joe
Glass.
Glass. I was just gonna say that
So
record's really
good.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's, and I love it. Like, you know, when I think when I was coming up and I would talk about like these really eclectic bands, I feel like it was more weird for people because there were people who just like, I like emo, I like this, I like
Right.
that. Like,
Yeah.
and I've always kind of had a cornucopia of things I was into. And I feel like a lot of these young Chicago bands that are like 25 and under, like sometimes like between like 17 and like this band called Uniflora. I don't know if anybody's even 21 yet, you
Hmm.
know, and these bands are great bands with like
Hmm.
really big like reference books of like things
Right.
that influence their music. And it's like I don't know, it's just kind of stunning to I think that's the wonderful thing about like Apple Music and Spotify and all that
Hmm.
shit of just having all this stuff at your fingertips and growing up like that.
Yeah,
you
Kai's
know
band Lifeguard is kind of like that where
Super great.
they're like referencing like dub reggae but
Yeah,
also unwound and
yeah,
like
I can go
you know
pavement and yeah,
yeah, you're
no,
just like,
exactly.
oh yeah, I guess when you have every song at your fingertips, you're
Yeah,
gonna
you grew up like that. Yeah,
if you're curious, you're gonna land on
yeah,
weird shit. Like all of a sudden you're like, oh, John Zorn, what's that? And
yeah,
how do
yeah,
we take what that is and then like insert it into our ramshackle like punk music,
yes,
and Sonic
yeah,
Youth did the same shit. So like this
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
all they just
No,
had
it's
to really dig to find
and
all of that stuff.
they did, but this is that thing that I'm talking about, like where we're just kind of like a give and take, and this is the
Hmm.
beauty of like all this. All of us, like this is where things get a little bit kind of like mystical and like amazing and magical, where we kind of like there's a handoff between the living and the dead, and
Yeah, yeah, no, I
I'm into all that stuff, and
yeah,
like and so it's just I don't know you know pick a and the Chicago scene is so vibrant,
yeah.
with young and old. It's a
Hmm.
really kind of amazing thing right now. So it's like that's been turning me on a lot. Like just playing. There's this young dude named Jim the Kid, who's
Okay.
like, and he goes by a bunch of different, you know, yeah, he's also like Boyce Dells or something like that. But he's one of
Okay.
the best fucking little guitarists I've ever seen in my life. I had him play guitar on one of my new songs because
Oh,
like
cool.
I was just struggling at this like lead part. And I sent it to him and he went way over the top. Like and I was just like it makes me sound so great.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Don't credit him on your record.
oh,
You got
he has to get credited. Yeah, no, he's too
okay.
good.
All right. Yeah.
But
J
yeah,
Jim
there's
the
just
Kid.
so there's just so many great bands just like surrounding me, and great musicians like I've been pulling like flautists. There's Vivi
Hmm.
Lightbody who
Hmm.
plays on record, and um, there's great string players, and I don't, and it's kind of it is a great time right now. I feel like just
Yeah.
where I'm at. So a lot of the stuff that like I'm kind of going crazy about is bands I can go see like this week. It's
Yeah.
kind of awesome.
You're spoiled. I mean, there's yeah,
Yeah,
I've definitely been clued into the Chicago, like younger Chicago
yeah,
pop adjacent scene, and yeah, I think that Sharp Pen stuff is super great. And
yeah.
I love how like they're just doing it, in this like it's punk, right? Like it's like some of it's lo-fi, some of it's like
Yeah, yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thrown together. I mean, I think that newest Horse Girl record that came out last year is so good,
It's so
and just like
amazing. Yeah.
it's so addictive and it's such a leap from the first one, almost in like this weird backwards way where like
Well, it's super
they kind of
minimal and
yeah,
like
they like
yeah,
stripped stuff away and they're actually playing
yeah.
here on Thursday.
Oh,
Um,
great.
so I
Yeah,
think I'm gonna go to that. I've seen him. I saw him open for the Breeders actually, like at the uh Fillmore or
yeah,
State Theater, which was kind of wild, where
yeah,
that show was even there to begin with. But
yeah.
well, cool. Well, thank you again. I
That's
just
been
have
a
like
great chat.
yeah,
Yeah.
I just have one kind of dorky last question,
Mm,
but it's kind of one of those like you're in an elevator with somebody and they find out you're a musician and you
mm.
have, like a minute or two to like tell them why they should check you out. Like what would you say to somebody who's like, oh, well, like, what do you sound like, or what about you do I need to know to then go listen to your music?
It's good.
I
Anytime
can
anybody,
agree.
yeah, anytime anybody ever says like, "Oh, what is your, what kind of music do you play?" I go, "Good music."
Good music. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
I can attest to it. I can attest to it. Well, thank you again, Craig, for being here. Um, I'll just list off a couple places that people can check out your stuff. You have a website.
I
It's
do.
I'm sorry, CBCB is my dot name. Sorry. I'll put it in the show notes. Still practicing how to speak.
Yeah,
Your Bandcamp is cbvb.bandcamp.com.
yeah,
Um, at CBVB on Instagram. And Don't Leave Your House to an Amateur is out now
that's right.
on Team Love Records. Is it physically available too, or is it just digital?
No, I don't think this one will be. Maybe the next one, but not this
Okay,
one.
cool,
Yeah,
cool, cool. Well, either way, it's a great record. I'm so happy that you're still making music. It's so good to see you and catch up with you.
right.
And
So
if you play in Detroit, maybe we could figure out something together.
let's set it up.
You let me know. Okay. I would
All right,
love to
let's
do
do it.
that. But thanks again. I hope you have a good night. And yeah, see you later, man. Thanks.
Thank you, Ryan.
Good night.
Toodles.